Hi everyone, and welcome to Wordsmiths. My name is Jenna, and today we're going to talk about setting. If the place feels real, the story will capture your audience even more. So I'll share with you how you can put more thought into your settings. First off, what elements make up a setting? I listed them from large to small, more or less. The setting is made up of the world the story takes place in, the time period, the region, the city, town, or a specific location, like a building or room, and the season, time of day, and weather. Maybe all of that won't be detailed, but they are parts of the setting. It's important to make the setting clear for the audience. It gives them context. That way they will feel grounded in the story and get invested. You can also use it to create a certain atmosphere or mood. Where the story takes place will also help shape the plot. You can't have certain events happen without the right weather or places. And sometimes the setting can inspire you to find new complications, like how plans have to change when the unexpected happens. When it comes to developing a setting, Google Maps is a great tool. You can do street views of cities or countryside or schools to get a better picture of what the surroundings look like, whether you're doing something specific or more loosely based. You should do some research if you're writing about a place you've never been. It'll help you get details that someone who lives there might know, rather than ones a tourist would know, like the Statue of Liberty in New York. Go for things that are a little less well known. If you're writing a fantasy or altered reality, though, you get to do a bunch of world building. That can be anything from the land to cities to government and history. Setting is like another character itself, so you can profile it with questions like these. Detail the landscape and climate. Figure out how the cities are laid out. Are they all set up relatively the same, or is each one different? Maze-like roads or straight and predictable? If you can create some history, like this was the old part of town where every house and shop was smushed so close together you could tumble right through your window into someone else's home, that's good. You could go for deeper historical events too, if it affects the current action. One of the big questions you'll want to consider is how the setting affects the people who live there. If there tends to be extreme weather, they will have ways to deal with it, like building structures to withstand earthquakes or floods, and making heat and cold more tolerable. You can think about the different perspective between permanent residents and visitors as well. Now your setting is clear in your mind, how do you convey it? Here's what you don't want to do. Avoid simply telling the details. You don't want to meticulously detail everything in the scene. That tends to bore, and it's what we call info dumping. Similarly, you don't need to bog down your writing with a lot of adjectives. Choose the strongest ones, and avoid using words with close meaning. If you say it right once, you don't have to say it again a different way. You probably shouldn't focus too much on the orientation of objects or directions a character is moving either. That can confuse. So, here's some tips on what you should do. Show the scene rather than tell. Writers are often told show, don't tell. Grasping that concept can be a little tricky. Basically, if there's a way to write it to get your reader to feel the setting instead of just seeing it, do it that way. These next points will help. Describe through the character's perspective. Maybe the character is reminded of somewhere else, so they can make comparisons and you can share their personality. Another technique is to describe the surroundings through action. Like, instead of saying, the wind was blowing so hard the trees bent sideways, you could say, when she stepped out the door, she nearly fell straight into the bushes. She had to dig her toes into the soles of her shoes and push her arms out against the wind to rebalance herself, gasping for breath. Whereas the first description certainly works, the second shows an aspect of the setting with action, through a character. It usually takes a bit longer to show rather than tell, but it immerses the reader and can help them connect to the characters on a deeper level. And of course, choose unique details to focus on. Say you're at the beach. Everyone will recognize sun and sand and foam on the waves, but how about the way the sand solidifies when the water retreats, with just enough give to leave a footprint, kind of like memory foam or fresh poured concrete? Sometimes the sand glitters and burns so much it's like walking on crushed diamonds. Just a couple examples there. And that leads us to the next subject for setting: utilize those senses. Sensory descriptions will bring the surroundings to life for your audience, so try to use all of them instead of relying on one or two. Also, you can get symbolism out of your setting. I've listed some examples here of how you can use details to symbolize or create a certain mood. Crisp, dry air could make you feel alert. Wide open spaces can either be freeing or too vulnerable. Spring and winter often represent new life and death. You could bring irony to your story too by doing the opposite of expectations. Say it's spring, but everything seems to be ending for your character. This is the reason it always seems to rain for funerals in any media. You can create all sorts of layers of meaning when you put that little bit of extra work into the setting. Lastly, let's touch on the characters in relation to setting. Places will affect people, how they live, how they feel, and how they think. So what kind of relationship does your character have with the setting? Do they like it, hate it, want to stay, can't wait to leave, look forward to returning, or never want to see it again? What reasons do they have behind how they feel? What's their history with it? If they know the setting inside and out, they're going to feel differently and have different knowledge than someone who just arrived. Two books that make setting a central part of the story are Incarceron and The Maze Runner. The setting itself can be an antagonist. Finally, the setting can mirror the characters. It can reflect their current mood. The feel of their hometown can represent their personality. Every character's slice of life will have a different flavor because of the setting. You can make the setting contrast characters just as easily, and sometimes that's even more entertaining. Now let's look at a published example. I'm currently reading Six of Crows, and I couldn't help noticing how well the setting was handled. The first quote I'm sharing here is set in Ketterdam, a bleak, waterlogged city full of crooked types. Drinking, gambling, greed, and more are commonplace here. Everyone has their own agenda. This is a description of the buildings in The Barrel, a specific part of Ketterdam. With words like without foundations, swampy, canals, haphazardly, tipsy friends, and drowsy angles, it reflects the dampness and the behavior of the people who live there. It's visual, conceptual, and relates touch. Second here is some action in the setting. A meeting of rival gang members takes place. We experience it from Inej's point of view, who gets to see it all from a rooftop. There's wind from the harbor, which gives us a scent, the raised hair on the back of the neck feeling, the visual of moving lamplight, and the single sound of a steady cane thumping on stone. It's clear and straightforward description that sets a mood of anticipation. The next setting here is Fiara. It's a frozen land. Fiara is Matthias's homeland, so he has a very different relationship with it than the others do. The rest of the party is feeling a loss of their home as the ship sails away, and as visitors to such an icy cold place, they don't know it like Matthias does. He sees the land as beautiful and values it on a more spiritual level than the others can, able to pick out color, shape, and apparently even scent. This is what I mean about how your characters will have a relationship with the setting. On broader terms, the differences between the city of Ketterdam and the land of Fiara are significant and are good choices for the characters and their quest. Ketterdam gives us insight into what makes the characters daring and desperate enough to attempt the prison break. The prison is the ice court, which is described as impenetrable, and the people there are orderly, meticulous, and commanding. A cold and icy environment is a great intimidating type of backdrop to symbolize the difficulty of the heist and the efficiency of the ice court. Meanwhile, the damp, crooked streets of Ketterdam are a great choice to develop the slippery characters who have taken on the challenge. And with that, it's time for prompts. This first one, go to one of your favorite places, somewhere that makes you feel inspired. Jot down notes about what you sense and how you feel being there. Imagine what kind of action could take place there. Write a story for that setting. If you want a challenge, write a story where characters return to that setting 3 times, but give each scene a different mood. Second, take a look at settings and descriptions in your story. Identify details that you can make symbolic, and find descriptions that you can make more unique. Third, the next time you're reading or watching something, pay close attention to how the setting is used and how the characters interact with it. You could be missing some great details the character included to help make the right atmosphere. Finally, a bonus number 4, if you're working on a fantasy, dystopia, science fiction, or anything similar, make a map. It could be the landscape or floor plans, whatever your story calls for. That's all today. I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, keep reading and stay inspired.